Yeah. What's up, guys? So, not really a standard intro here. It's a bit of an odd video to make. I actually have worked on recording this video for probably the past 2 hours now, going on hour number 3 at the moment. It's a video I didn't really want to make, to be perfectly honest. It's the last video of its type, the last video of its kind. It's actually after, or this recording takes place after the tweet that I made saying that I made this video, and then it's like 50 minutes long. Um, I want to do this a bit differently because, perfectly honest, I went back and I've rewatched that video, and while it's not bad, I do think it goes a bit into too much of me personally that doesn't really add a lot to the conversation. It adds a lot of fluff to the video itself. I want to pull a little bit back. So I'm going to be a bit more vague in the topics I talk about myself and be a bit more objective overall. So hopefully it adds to a better narrative overall to this video because there is a lot to unpack here. First off, a couple of things. First and foremost, I'm probably not going to toss any sort of monetization on this video, primarily because I don't like making these types of videos. I don't want them to be a staple for my channel. And though this video might do very well, it's not something that I want to be a part of why I feel like this channel does well. Based on how this video does, I do have someone else that, I share this sort of revenue with. I will still be providing them what is made off of this video itself. For this video, I'm personally taking a stance of not monetizing it, so I'll be keeping an eye on what it would normally, how well it would normally do, so on and so forth. Second off, before we go into this, I will be talking about a couple of situations that have happened in the community to provide a bigger light or shed a larger light on the situation itself. Before we get into those sort of situations, I want to be very, very clear about this, and I want to be very straightforward. I have no ill will, nor do I have any hate toward any individuals that were a part of these situations. Personally, as I was not a part of them, they did not affect me personally whatsoever. What anyone chooses to do is up to them. They're the ones that deal with the consequences of them. And I have no hate for anyone who's chosen to cover this information either. There's a specific way that I choose to cover my info because it is to protect myself as well as my situations I've dealt with in the past. So it's a bit of, being a little gun shy in some situations. So I'm very, very careful, and we will go into that in just a bit. And tertiary, like I mentioned, I'm just not doing this again. I don't like making drama videos. I don't like making this sort of situation to light, and I'm going to be very vague because I don't want to bring these situations to light super often. If you guys want to get into a bit more, you're more than welcome to ask me about them over on my Twitch channel. You guys know I stream twitch.tv/chronocatastrophe. We'll be live to those a bit more often again. I've been dealing with a bit of of IRL, a bit of burnout, learning what apparently is a bit of depression as well. So that's interesting. I've never felt that one before, but that's something new. But it's something that I'm personally working through right now, and yeah, it's a big old mess. But we're gonna get back to all of that. We'll be okay. I'm fine. Just so you guys are aware, I am okay. So those of you guys who have reached out since seeing a few tweets, I am totally okay. I appreciate you guys reaching out. Continue to do that if you ever see that pop up. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever do that. Sometimes people really need that reach out, and it also does add to making those people feel better, along with myself. I felt a lot better when people reached out. So thank you guys all for doing so. But that is besides the point. I do want to get into this, and we're going to talk about a couple of different topics today. So much that you guys have seen in the title of this video, probably that would draw you in, or what drew you in, but there's a dark side to the PSO2 community. And that dark side doesn't just exist in the PSO2 community. That is the dark side to gaming in general. These dark sides exist in every single community where people present themselves one way. However, there's more to the story that we don't always see on the surface. We have to be very careful because a lot of times people don't interact with these dark sides of the community. Now, being in a unique situation, I've covered Phantasy Star from, I want to say back in 2016 through 2017. 2017 is my first video I released on the YouTube channel that covered Phantasy Star specifically, and kind of just went forward from there. We had a lot of influence in the community itself from being one of the few streamers that streamed the game consistently because of a challenge that I dealt with, to being one of the bigger streamers of the community itself, just from being around for so long and having so much information about the game. To give a little bit of a backstory, my first time dealing with kind of the dark side of this community was an event that I will say previously I went into a bit more detail on. I'm going to be very vague about it this time around, but essentially, because of a take I had in a game or because of a take I had of a weapon in game that I was not very happy with, I dealt with people trash talking me in some pretty terrible, heinous ways behind my back. That was brought to light, a few weeks afterwards. I will say, be careful of who you trust, because usually it's your friends that tell on you, to be perfectly honest. So you may think that someone is all behind you, but when they realize the type of person that you act like, they tend to bring it to light much quicker. So if you're that type of person, you should be careful of who you trust, because it's usually your friends that are the ones that are the quickest to to tell on you immediately, and that happens all the time. You'd be surprised how often. Either way, this was brought to light, brought to my attention, and it was brought into a situation where my stream was a part of it as well. I at the time was a very small creator and was very, very protective over my stream, so I just removed everyone that was a part of the situation, not only my stream but my Twitter account, as well as my YouTube page, and on top of that, my Discord. They got axed completely. Moved everyone, got rid of all of it. It was just done. Fast forward a bit into let's say our global situation, but we had a couple of videos where they had some pretty sizable impacts on the market when it came to base PSO2. There's a lot of information that players just didn't have. There's a lot of situations and a lot of systems that were very, very complex or just a little bit strange to work with. And a lot of us who had information about how the systems worked and those interactions worked were very, very popular. A very common thing would be that I would talk about something on stream for a few weeks and then make a video about it. And then after the video releases, the next day, the item would either jump up in price or become very much more difficult to get a hold of, or just become farmed into oblivion. It just became very obvious for a lot of players that if a video got made about it, people would see it, and it would, people would start to use that to their advantage. Now, this not only got some people that were super happy about this information, getting to see how this worked out, so on and so forth, but it also brought a lot of animosity towards it as well. I dealt with DMs, whispers, all kinds of crazy things that you guys probably will never see ever. That, perfectly honest, people will always say you should have like tough skin, or don't let people get under your skin, don't let people upset you, things of that sort. But like, if you guys saw some of the messages that some people send when the anonymity of internet is on their side, it's pretty terrible to think that anyone would have to deal with these sorts of things. And I'm not saying this is, oh, what was me. I'm not the only person who deals with this stuff. I have a good friend, or someone I interacted with over in the Final Fantasy XIV community by the name of Mr. Happy, who's dealt with these things beforehand in the past. I never understood why he didn't like, when people would say, oh, hey, is that the real Mr. Happy, or would notice him in game, because sometimes you have to deal with those animosities. And it's just like, some days you just can't, man. Like, sometimes there's only one person who has to say the wrong thing to ruin your entire day. And when you're someone that puts yourself out there all the time, it's really, really tough to not let that happen all the time, because you are subject to it 24/7. And again, anonymity of the internet is an insane thing. So I never really understood his perspective in that situation until playing PSO2 and dealing with it myself. So the fact that things like streamer mode exist now in PSO2, and you can stop people from even having communication with you altogether, is a welcome change. Where some people are like, oh, that seems silly, why would you have that streamer privilege? It's definitely needed. So moving on past that, it's needless to say, I've dealt with some pretty heinous stuff, and I know other people have as well. I've had conversations with other content creators who've had to deal with some crazy things as well, and none of it's deserved. It's pretty crazy how terrible some people can be sometimes. But moving on, fast forwarding a little bit more, we're moving into a situation now where we're over on global NGS, right? So there was a host of ban waves that went out, that people were dealing with because of something called, now this is a different topic. Before I jump into this, I'm just gonna give a quick little warning. It's a bit more of a mature topic, just so you guys are aware of it. If someone's watching the video, or maybe you're watching this out loud with your kids around, maybe you should toss in some headphones, something like that. Anyway, people were starting to get banned from the game for what's called ERP, erotic roleplay. Now, ERP technically is against terms of service. I'm going to talk about this a bit more later on in the video. Well, not too much later on, because I don't want to make this video too long, but it's against terms of service. And there was a campaign that someone just started up over on a third-party website to show not only how to report these players, but to seek them out, find them and report them, goad them even into saying something or trick them into like saying something to get them reported and banned. It basically was a witch hunt, which seemed a bit stupid to me. Now again, ERP is against TOS. Not RP, ERP is against, and there's a difference. Roleplay is not against TOS, erotic roleplay is. That does matter as far as the difference between the two of them. One thing to keep in mind is that even though you're doing something between two people that are consenting, if someone else says, hey, look, they've been doing this thing, realistically speaking, you can get in trouble. Now, it's kind of a two-sided thing, right? If you're doing this between two people that are consenting and no one's, speaking about it outside of that, technically speaking, there's no way for someone else to say that that's what's happening unless they have some form of proof. Technically, it's also against TOS to submit fake claims. So someone is also essentially risking themselves by doing this. However, part of what they showed on this site, this third-party site, was that you could use a new account using the the Epic Store, which that's what Epic needs, is more reason for people to hate on the launcher. But using the Epic Store to create a new account separate, and then report people that way. You wouldn't have to even play the game. But technically speaking, creating a new account is also against TOS. So these people are also technically taking a risk amongst themselves. However, the risk to them is substantially less by doing this, if they're not dumb, which I kind of feel like these people would be dumb, but that's besides the point. Essentially, there was this crazy witch hunt that happened for these players that they were getting banned. And while I don't agree with the way these other players did this, well, I feel like it's stupid. Honestly, ERP doesn't bother anyone unless you're like having it out with everyone, like basically around with unconsenting adults out in the open. Like, if it's like that, then that's completely different, right? Like it's a completely different conversation. But if between two people that are consenting adults and it's just between the two of them and they're not bothering anyone, I really don't care. Like it's nothing that affects me. I don't think it really matters. But it's worth mentioning, it is against terms of service, so it is a bannable offense. But this speaks again to the dark side of this community. These players just were out to get these people in trouble, goading them, trying finding ways around even getting themselves involved or removing risk from them. In some cases, people are just blatantly shooting shots in the dark, assuming that players were like this, and sometimes just getting it right. So players that feel like they were very careful, they didn't have conversations outside of what they're basically players that felt like there was no reason for them to get banned still got banned because technically they got caught, which was stupid and that sucks. However, again, was still a violation. Now, why do I keep mentioning these violations and things like that? Because it's actually important to understand that breaking TOS does get you banned. It sucks, but it's part of the process itself, and it's something that you basically agree to when you start playing the game. Every game has a terms of service, and if you break their terms of service, they have the right to ban you from the game itself. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show off something really quick here. Yes, I actually did read the TOS for you guys, by the way. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the TLDR is essentially this is shutdown of online services or termination of accounts. This is basically what they can do or what they say they will do if you fall into these categories. So Sega can terminate or suspend your account immediately without notice. This is very important to keep in mind because of I'll be honest, guys, I'm all over the place. I am in Facebook. I keep an eye on Twitter, on social media, on Instagram, all over the place, right? People have different individual conversations when it comes to PSO2 just because I like seeing this stuff. I like seeing the art and things like that, but I also see all of the negative sides. And one thing that I've seen consistently is, damn, Sega banned me and they didn't tell me why. This is BS. They should at least have to tell me why I got banned. They don't. They don't, and they tell you that they don't. Flat out. If you chose not to read it, that's up to you. But no one reads the TOS unless they're weird like me, but they don't have to. In most games, this is pretty consistent. Your account can be terminated and they do not have to tell you why. There's a reason why they don't in a lot of situations, but we're going to go into that in just a second. But this is very important to mention. And the reason they would do this is they suspect or sole discretion that you breached or are in breach of any of the terms of service, including the player code of conduct. This is a big one. You break TOS, they can ban you without telling you. The other one is, in doing so, is the best interest of Sega or the player community. You feel like you're being disruptive, feel like you're being disruptive to Sega or the player community, they can also ban you, and they're able to do so. Their full rights of doing it. You agree to saying that they're allowed to do this by playing the game itself. And again, this isn't just Sega. This is a lot of games, and a lot of games are very, very strict about this sort of thing. I remember with Final Fantasy XIV back in the day, if you streamed it and you streamed anything but its in-game music, you could get your stream banned, which was insane to me. 14 right now is dealing with a whole slew of issues with third-party applications and a bunch of players getting banned because things are against TOS. These things are here. They're shown. They're very straightforward about it. Just because we don't read them and just because we don't agree with them does not mean that they aren't able to action on them. Now, that being said, there are some things about the TOS I don't agree with, both on 14 side and on Sega side. However, by playing the game, we are saying that they are able to do this. One big one, and a reason why a lot of people didn't used to stream base PSO2 with JP back in the day, is you provided false information or information used without authorization to Sega, including during account registration. If you made a JP account and you didn't live in Japan, you provided false information. I'm not going to tell you how. I don't want to get into specifics of how, but you provided false information in making that account. That's just the long and short of it. You're not able to play a Japanese account without being in Japan. And if you did so, you were breaking TOS. A lot of us did. A lot of us dealt with that sort of situation. And you played knowing your account could get banned. That's why a lot of people didn't stream base PSO2 back in the day. They were concerned that they would get their accounts banned. But anyway, moving forward past that, this is important to keep in mind. And a big portion of this, let me see if I can find it. I usually have to check something. Let's see if I can know where it's at. There we go. Examples of prohibited and bad behavior. So remember beforehand, like I mentioned, that ERP is against TOS. Engaging in conductive or communication that in Sega's sole discretion is harmful, defamatory, vulgar, obscene, hateful, abusive, inflammatory, intimidating, discriminatory, violent, or encouraging of violence, sexually explicit, or otherwise offensive or objectionable. Basically, doing any of these things are examples of prohibited and bad behavior to others. That includes sexually explicit. So that includes ERP. That's the fact that it's against TOS. Again, do I agree? I don't really think it matters if you're having a conversation privately, but it is against TOS. So to say that it's unjust, it shouldn't have happened, while we can disagree with it, does not mean that it's unjust. Something to keep in mind as far as what we're looking at when it comes to TOS violations. Now, all this is kind of in precursor to essentially a drama event that's happened in the PSO2 community, right? So, popping over to Twitter, we have this tweet that popped up from the Play PSO2 team, showing off a bunch of a sneak peek, basically, of the winning entries from the PSO2 9th anniversary item design contest. This specific picture here had a tweet that popped up underneath it from user %+. It would have been nice if you told me my submission won an email or something, instead of ignoring my requests or for support after banning me. I'm not going to get anything for the effort I put in. So, a few things. First off, we talked about TOS, right? How important that stuff is. These item design contests also have their own TOS as well. You got to read through these entire things. Part of this is that Sega essentially, I'm going to give you as a short version. I recommend reading through this. Also, I'm not legal representation, so take advice at your. I'm not giving you legal advice, but I would say read through these things if you're going to jump into this. Participants agree that Sega may sell or distribute their winning submissions in game as a matter to be determined by Sega. When making use of submitted work, as described above, Sega may alter them or adapt them. These are all things that they are able to do. Now you'll notice a little bit of a shift in the video itself. I had to take a quick break in between just to kind of keep my head wrapped around this, but it's a good idea because this video is already getting a little longer and I kind of want to, again, I want to trim this down a bit. But like we were mentioning beforehand, talking about basically how Sega can use this information itself. So making use of submitted works as described above, Sega may alter or adapt them. Also a thing here. Now here's a big portion of this, and something that you really have to pay attention to in these submissions. Sega assumes ownership rights to all submitted works, not works that won, not specific works, runner-ups or anything like that, all submitted works, and may make unrestricted use of them at its discretion. Participants agree that their submitted works will not be returned, and they forfeit all rights to their use. That means if you enter this information, you enter the contest, even if you don't win, they can still use that work. By agreeing to this, you join knowing the following. It's very important. And participants whose submissions are made into in-game items will receive the items based on their submission. So the only thing that they say specifically here is that if your item gets made into an in-game item, you get it. That's it. So going along with this, saying they're not going to get anything for the effort they put in, technically, if this player wasn't banned, they would. And the only thing that they're subject to based on the rules of the engagement of this contest is the in-game item, which sucks they won't be able to see. Now, for the record, hats off to Percent Plus. They have handled this very gracefully. Now, the reason behind why they handle it gracefully, up to determination. Part of what I like to talk about is I personally am very, what's what I'm looking for in this, a skeptical individual. I don't like to speak on something unless I have all of the information. So you guys are you're going to find that in part of this conversation, I am going to omit certain points of opinion because I do not know that everything that I have seen is factual. Now, Percent Plus does mention that they were banned, and they mentioned that their requests were ignored after being banned. We went over beforehand. They're not required to tell you why you're banned. They also don't have to answer those requests. Now, I believe an open line of communication is the most important thing a dev team or any sort of team can have with their player base. However, it is very, very easy to maliciously use that open line of communication. One thing that, funny enough, I had a conversation with my mom about this actually. Growing up, my brain defaults to loopholes. I look for a way to find a weak point in something and exploit it. It's why I went into network security. It's why I work in or around information security. It's just something that my brain just sees very clearly, very quickly, and it just adapts a way of using it to its advantage without me even really trying. And the biggest thing that I look for whenever these situations come about, and even my colleagues, is where the fault was and where something went wrong. So if I made a mistake, what was my exact mistake? How did I make that mistake so how I cannot make it again? And realistically, how can I bend it better? Growing up in high school, man, I was probably the biggest rule breaker when it came to our rule book in school without it being in the rule book. It's kind of weird to say, but to answer you guys, to basically make that make a bit more sense, I went to a uniform school, and I was notorious for breaking dress code violations that didn't exist yet. Essentially, there were tons of things written into the rule book after I graduated because I broke them all my senior year, and they couldn't amend the rule book apparently mid-year. Fun stuff that are still to this day a part of that rule book. I've gone back years later and talked with my previous, teachers, things like that. And it's pretty funny to see some of this stuff, but yeah, it exists. And part of the things that I look for immediately, again, in my brain, whenever I'm looking to mess with something is what, mistake did I make? Where did I mess up? What went wrong? First and foremost, if I got in trouble, what did I get in trouble for? It's very common that happens a lot of times when we're looking at bans. People ask, I got banned and I got no answer why, even though I asked, they didn't tell me. I'll be honest with you guys. Now, I can't say this is the reason why they do this, but part of why a lot of times companies do this specifically is because they don't want you to figure out a better way of breaking the rule. They usually do a mass ban wave. They ban a bunch of people, and they let out an article saying, we banned a bunch of people for this reason. They don't tell you specifically you were banned for this reason, but they say they banned a bunch of people for a reason. Now, you might have been banned for a different reason. However, there's no way for you to know for sure. And part of why they do this is so that people can't reverse engineer the process. Because I'll be honest with you, it's very easy to reverse engineer how to not get banned if you got banned for a specific reason. You just check off a list of where this went wrong. That way you just don't do it again to break the rule better next time. I'm not saying this is what this individual does, but it's a very common tactic that happens. People very, very commonly ask, why was I banned? What went wrong? And sometimes they are just looking for closure. However, that is not everyone. And we have to keep in mind that you have to look at a bigger picture when we're looking at these situations. Most of the time, people are looking for how to break a rule better. So unfortunately, this has to be across the board. Now, on top of that, it is also substantially easier to deal with these situations if you do a mass ban line, tell no one anything, and then give the blanket reason over top. So part of it is also PSO2 just making it very easy for themselves across the board, because paying people to do this is not, what's what I'm looking for here in this situation. It's not, it doesn't make any money, I guess, is the thing to say. Companies have to invest money into these sorts of things. It doesn't make them money in a lot of cases. So it's something that a lot of companies struggle with to get right. And that's me saying it the very nice way, as I'm sure some of you guys have dealt with a lot of these situations beforehand. And some of you guys are probably already in the comment section below, this team sucks, blah, blah. I mean, it is something that a company needs to sink money into. It is not something that makes them money. We would all love to think in our minds that players have the goodwill of just throwing money at the company because they agree with something that they're doing, but that's not the case. Something has to not only be good, it also has to be worth it for players to give money to it. And that's just the reality of the situation. So a lot of times this is the spot that companies tend to cut corners. Do I agree with it? No, I hate it. I really wish this was something that was more vocal, that we could play to, we could talk to a bit more often. But it's not the case for a lot of games. And part of being a creator is realizing that, is knowing that this is what happens. But that's besides the point. So talking about the situation itself, Percent Plus was banned back in September. They spoke to it. I'm not going to go through all of the Twitter posts themselves, but they talked about they got banned back in September. They didn't get a reason as to why they got banned, and apparently their contest, their design didn't even actually win the contest. It was a runner-up. It was like an honorable mention, and I guess Sega just decided that they wanted to add it in. It's a good outfit. It's an awesome outfit. No wonder they wanted to add it in. This is a dope ass outfit. A lot of people are going to wear it. They're going to tag this creator in it. But it was something that they just decided to. And based on their terms and conditions, they can. And they don't owe the creator anything outside of the item in game, which they gave up when they got banned. Now, one thing I will speak to specifically here in this case, and I'm going to give this as kind of like an overview. Based on the information that we have seen from Twitter, from creators speaking to Percent Plus and things of that sort, the way this information has been provided to us looks like they were banned for no reason. They did not get any information from Sega, and now they won't get a chance to get their outfit. On Twitter, they've conducted themselves very, very well. They have not, got super upset and jumped down Sega's throat or yelled at them or anything along those lines. They mentioned that, they have been very, outwardly spoken about the game itself. Technically, they have been, an area chat, and that might have been one reason they got banned, which, I mean, technically speaking, in terms of service, where is it underneath that spot? If I can find it again. The examples of bad behavior, if it fell into any of these categories, technically speaking, that could have been a reason why they got banned. However, we don't know. And part of why I didn't really, jump on the rabbit hole of like, this player deserves more, they should get something from Sega, is the reality is we don't know. We don't know the conversations they had. We don't know the chat logs they look through. We don't know the type of person that they physically are. We know the type of person that they presented to us. That's something against that individual themselves. I always urge on the side of caution. You guys be cautious of me. Be cautious of any other creator out there. It's totally fine to support people, but understand that you may not have the entire picture. And that's why I'm usually very skeptical, because I have dealt with situations where people have presented one side of themselves to find out there is a completely different side. And that's why I took the stance that I did. I just really didn't talk about it. Now, if this player is innocent of doing anything terrible, maybe they're outspoken against the game or anything along those lines, that's not a huge deal in my opinion. They should be given the option to, you know, get into the game, check out their outfit, so on and so forth. Hell, maybe they should get the option to create a new account and then tell say, hey, look, this is my new account. Would you guys mind giving me the outfit to this new account or something like that? Maybe they did break TOS. Maybe that was something that happened and they got banned for it. Technically speaking, when you break TOS, you're agreeing that you can get banned for it. And honestly, there should be a line of communication. However, this player, because they got their item in game, because they didn't get any information about it, does not mean that they're warranted that extra information. And I hate to say that, like, I hate to be that person in the situation itself, but no one is above the TOS. I can get banned tomorrow. I could. And if I broke TOS, it's justified. That's just the reality of the situation. If I got banned from the game because I broke TOS, it's a justified ban. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a creator, the fact that I'm an official NGS content creator or anything along those lines. I'm not above it. It doesn't matter if I am this individual. If anything else, I should be held more responsible because of it. So while I want this person to get a chance to see their outfit and I want this person to get a chance to play the game, I don't want to get behind a situation where it's possible that I'm saying all of these things without having the full picture. When we have the full picture, maybe we'll talk about it more. But the reality is we only have the picture that's been presented to us. And while I'd love to have every piece of information, I'll be honest with you guys. Partway into making this video, part of the way I took a break. I keep my eyes all over the place, check out, you know, different social medias and things like that. I've seen some pretty terrible things that have popped up that only support my decision in not jumping on board of absolutely saying that, you know, this is deserved and this player needs more, so on and so forth. That's really all I'm going to say to it, because again, I don't have definitive, you know, 100% proof behind one thing. It's he said, she said, so on and so forth. So I highly, highly suggest you guys look into it on your own, make your own decisions. But part of it is make sure you have the entire picture before you decide what you want to do. Anyway, guys, like I mentioned beforehand, this is not a video I like to make. This is not a video that we're making again. This is pretty much it when it comes to these types of videos. We won't be doing this again. I feel like we have kind of covered everything that needs to be covered. And again, this is no hate towards any of my fellow creators who have made any videos or anything along those lines. Support them 100%. You guys are awesome. However, this is why I personally don't take these stances without knowing more. Based on the information that we've been provided, I 100% agree with those individuals. However, I don't feel like we've been provided all the information. And that's also important. Now, on a better note, I want to end the video on a little bit of a higher note. It's more of a suggestion than anything else. Two things I would love to see. As official NGS content creators, I would love to have a line of communication to the dev team just to get a bit more information overall. Not necessarily about, you know, a ban or something along those lines, but let's take, for example, this contest. How cool would it have been for some of us, or maybe even the social team over at PSO2 or at the global PSO2 team, to do the reveal for these? Maybe have an event where they showed off the names, showed off the outfits. How insanely awesome would that have been? That'd have been so cool to be able to have that sort of event for the community. And I think that would turn around some of these situations in so much of a better light. But anyway, guys, my voice is pretty much hoarse. I have spent hours reading TOS, and I'm so over reading for more than just this game, by the way, for quite a few actually. I've been talking for like 2 hours straight. So I'm done. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to toss in the comments below. I'm sure the comments for this are going to be all over the place. Part of me dreads even releasing the video itself. Probably going to do it anyway, but we'll see how things go. If you like the video, toss it a like. I'd much appreciate it. Again, we're not going to be tossing monetization on this video itself. I'm going to be compensating anyone else that's a part of this video that helps me with things to do with this video itself separately. Yeah, it's going to be very bare bones, just what you guys have gotten so far. Anyway, like I said before, and like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to keep up with more, guys. And I'll see you on the next video. Oh, and one final note, I guess I can't end it all positively. As for the comments, I know the route they're going to be going. I've been criticized in the past for this. I'll be honest with you guys and very straightforward. If you can't bring your opinion in a civilized manner, I'm going to remove you. It's just that simple. I don't have the patience, nor should anyone else have the patience of having to deal with someone that can't just have a civilized conversation about something. We don't have to agree. That's totally fine. I've had many disagreements with my friends beforehand. I've had disagreements with individuals on stream and had conversations with them. But if that's not something you can do, I'm just going to show you the door. So take this as your warning. You've been warned. Anyway, guys, take care. Peace out.